Congratulations on the book. It's called Unlovable. And Darren Hayes, you are anything but.
Thank you. I mean, it's named after a song called Unlovable, and I wrote that at a period in my life when I was in a really abusive romantic relationship. And the chorus of that song said, "You made me feel like my father never loved me. You made me feel like the act of love was empty. Am I so unlovable? Is my skin untouchable, or do I remind you of a part of you that you don't like?" And that song really epitomized a wound so big, like a black hole, that began maybe when I was 3 years old, just from the childhood trauma that I experienced. And as much as it baffles me, because my father always terrified me, I think it was the lack of a father's love. And I spent probably until I was 47, 48 in my life struggling to replace the deficiency of the lack of a father's love, as much as I never wanted to admit that. But yeah,
Did you realize that that was what it was all about?
I knew that I was no exception to the cliche of the performer, and not every performer. I mean, I'm talking classic performers like Marilyn Monroe, Michael Jackson, these performers who have had Madonna even, who have had these catastrophic moments of trauma that have created this pressure that creates an almost like diamond resiliency within you that gives you, in some sense, the delusion and the ambition to want to achieve at the highest level, but also for the wrong motivations. The motivations being, if I can make the world love me, maybe
The hurt
this
will go away.
aching, yeah, this aching pain will go away.
Yeah, I hear you.
Mm,
So that's obviously what propelled you to strive for massive success, which of course you did find. Did that
mhm.
soothe your soul?
No, of course not. It soothes your soul for the 2 hours that you're on stage. It soothes your soul when you are with fans who are so beautiful. But it was those lonely hours in hotel rooms when the public didn't see me, when I was the most sad.
When did you first start contemplating releasing all those emotions through a book?
Decades ago, I started to write a book just for myself, thinking I might try to get it published. And we can joke about this. It was such a sad story. It reminds me of that movie, The Wedding Singer. There's a line in there when Rebel Wilson steals Kristen Wiig's diary, and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, was that your diary? I thought it was just a very, very sad book." I deleted it. But when I was making my last album, I was lucky enough to write a musical that was based on my childhood. So I was already sort of dealing with these themes of childhood wounds and laying down the burden of shame in a sort of a theatrical, creative sense. But it wasn't until I did press for my album, Homosexual, when The Guardian in the UK asked for a childhood photo that they recreate. And the one I gave them was when I was 10, and I was such a good little boy, sitting on my bed, doing my geography homework, Michael Jackson on the stained walls behind me. And they asked me to tell the story of that photograph. And I guess to everyone who read it, they were horrified because I just told the truth, which was that what you couldn't see on the other side of the camera was the war zone that I was living in. I instantly got two book offers. It was very validating that Penguin especially said, look, we don't want to hear a story about the breakup of the band or which celebrities you met or how fabulous it was to be. We want to hear this story about resilience, surviving domestic abuse, bullying, your mental health. Like that is something that we think could help people. And that's something I've always wanted to do. So that was the right time for me to write this book.
Yeah, well, you've certainly helped people through your music because leagues of fans all over the world can relate to that. And I'm sure now, with the release of the book Unlovable, you'll have leagues of fans being able to relate to the stories that you've been brave enough to share. Your mother really comes up trumps in this book, doesn't she? How does she feel about it?
Oh, she was the first person I gave the book to, and I would never speak any of this without her permission. I had to get her permission to write the song Two Beds and a Coffee Machine back in 1999. That song, at the time, a lot of people didn't realize that's about me. It's a song about on being on the run in Australian motels that had two beds and a coffee machine. And we had to do that because my mother was always forced into those motels, either if we were on the run from my father, or most likely when he'd beaten her so severely, he didn't want his mates to see what he'd done to his wife. So he would send her away while the bruises healed. And she sharing these stories helps people. Today, more than ever, I would say the single most important social justice or political topic that I want to champion and feel connected to is women's safety and women's rights. My mother is a victim of 70s domestic abuse without the protection of the law. She was beaten up on her wedding night. A lot of what I describe here is not only very common for a lot of people who grew up in the same sort of socio-economic status that I did back then in Queensland, but also that none of this violence has really changed. And in fact, the morbidity rate has increased. It's terrifying to me. And so the book, in a lot of ways, is a tribute to the resilience of my mother, who somehow has a worldview that is still positive and magical and believes in the power of love in spite of sacrificing any chance she would have ever have had to experience romantic love. She never had that.
What's the overriding message to your readers in this book? What do you hope they'll get out of it?
Well, there's a few. I think the main one is that abuse and shame exist in silence. And when you bleach them, they very quickly reveal themselves to be the tiny, spineless, quivering, cowardly worms that they are. Shame, especially, is such an unnecessary construct that humans are often at the mercy of. And it's because of our fear of judgment. And I would hope that anyone who reads this book has the courage, if they're struggling, to just tell one person. And the other part of it is mental health is hugely important to me. I am so privileged that at the first sign of any suicidal tendencies, and believe me, there have been many throughout my life, just speaking out about mental health, about how there are ways out, that your brain lies to you, and that you can have a very fulfilling and loving life if you just speak out and seek help and get past the stigma of talking about it. That's what I hope people can get from this book because I survived, my mother survived, she thrived.
Wow.
Yeah.
So needless to say, it's been pretty cathartic and exercise for you.
Yes, of course. It's been a real gift because I think when I wrote the book, what happened, like a lot of trauma, is that I was stepping around some landmines. And I was lucky enough to go back. I paused and went back into therapy and was able to reprocess a lot of early childhood memories, some that were pre-verbal. I witnessed a lot of things that I didn't and wasn't able to put a voice to.
Mm.
And through writing this book, I was given the opportunity to go back into therapy and give that little child some agency and autonomy and let him know that he doesn't have to be in charge anymore.
So good.
That I'm here, and that's been such a gift.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's certainly not an easy read. It does delve into all your struggles. It's absolutely beautifully written. I mean, your talent for writing is undeniable from all the songs that you've written to this book. I'm sure you're going to get a movie deal now. You know that it's going to be turned into a movie, don't you?
I would love to turn this book into either a movie or a documentary. I'd love to write another book, maybe a fictional book. Thank you for those kind words. That means so much to me.
Darren Hayes, you really are an amazing young man. You've sold something like 23 million records. You've written an amazing book now that's going to help a lot of people. Anybody who reads it will get something out of it, whether they've suffered similar fate in the past to you or not. It's full of emotion. You are full of emotion. No wonder your songs sold so well. We truly, madly, deeply love you, Darren.
You're so kind. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. And I know I wouldn't be here with any of these songs. And I do want to finish by saying, I hope people know I feel so grateful to be the caretaker of these songs. I know how much music means to people because it means so much to me, and I'll never stop singing them. Wow, what an amazing life I've been given. So thank you to you, and thank you to anyone who even just casually listened to one song because you gave me an extraordinary life.
You're incredible. You make the hairs stand up on my arms.
Mm.
Please say hi to your gorgeous mother for us too. And
I
oh,
will. I'm so excited. I get a whole week to get to cuddle her, and
lovely.